to your Voice in Power Hour on the My Voice in Power show for Unity Live Radio.
So I'm guessing then that obviously you've left him now after you've moved house. So I'm guessing that would have added to his behaviour, like in terms of the way he was treating you and stuff like that.
What, moving?
Well, leaving him after you've moved.
Oh, I don't know. I think he would have been nightmarish no matter what. So I think I think because we moved so far, we moved to another country.
Yeah.
I think that gave him his excuse to completely lose the plot. I think that it gave him the victim status. I've taken his son away. That gave him the victim status that he loves.
Yeah.
that he literally lives for, Yeah.
So do you think he's a good father, or do you think he's just doing what he needs to do so that he doesn't look bad?
I don't think he's a good father. I think he loves his son as far as he's able to love anybody.
Yeah.
But he would never put him first. He'll never be the priority.
Okay.
That he's number one priority. The number one priority is him and what's good for him. And my son and what's best for him will never come first. No.
Yeah, so I like that. He loves him for as far as he can love anyone. And the reason it was a question is because I saw, I think it was a video I read somewhere, that people who are narcissists do not love their children. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I think they do, but as I said, as far as they can love anyone, they do. The problem is that when you really love somebody, well, children anyway, you have to put them first,
Yeah.
To a certain extent, I know that I have to look after myself to be the best for my son.
Yeah.
But his needs, and he needs to be the priority for me. But for narcs, that's no one is the priority but them.
Yeah.
So they can feel genuine love and caring for their children. I do think that they do feel that, but in the end, protecting themselves and their illusion of themselves and all the other things that go with that, in the end, that's always the priority.
Okay. I get
so
that.
The child will, and if the child doesn't go along with that in any way, they will feel it. They'll be punished. So the relationship isn't different, despite the fact that they have love for them.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't change that. It doesn't change that fact that they have to keep up that illusion. They have to keep up the illusion of themselves as being perfect, and it's everyone else, So I think, don't get me wrong, I think when my son and his dad do things that his dad is into, right, that his dad likes, they genuinely have a good time together. They do have fun together, and they have Skype calls and they do silly things on Skype, and they do have a laugh together, which is great, but I think there will come a time when that will be tested and challenged, because kids challenge you and test you. That's just life. And how he deals with that, I'm not filled with optimism about how he's going to deal with any of that. No.
Yeah, because for me, I'm thinking that the reason why they have those good times is because your child is good at adapting to his dad's needs, not because the dad is good at adapting to the child.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
So do you think you must feel like you're in a catch-22 situation, because obviously you're trying to do what's right for your child by not interfering in the father-child relationship based on your relationship, but also you're subjecting your child to narcissistic tendencies and behaviours.
Yes.
But also your child, with children experiencing things is inevitable, because that's the way they learn. Like,
yeah.
So how do you manage that? Yeah.
I did a lot of research on this.
Okay.
And there's not that many options.
Okay.
But I think probably moving away was one of the best moves, because it means that he doesn't see him all the time.
Okay.
So when he is with him, he recognizes certain behaviors and lying, for instance, that are not okay, because that's not how we behave here. Right?
Okay.
So because he has an example of what's okay and what's acceptable in my house, then he recognizes things that are not acceptable, or things that are wrong, things that he doesn't like, or that make him feel uncomfortable. And he'll come back and talk about those things. Don't get me wrong, it might take a couple of weeks, usually 10 days or so after he's back, something will come out. And I don't really ask him, how was your dad? Or I don't ask him things like that. It will usually come out gradually.
Yeah.
So, and I don't overreact when he does tell me.
Okay.
I don't go back to his dad and say, you shouldn't have done this. I don't do that, because that makes it worse for him. And he feels like, and he needs to feel like he can trust me, and he can tell me this stuff, and I'm not going to go back and tell his dad, because actually he is a little bit afraid of that.
Yeah.
So, he realizes that his dad's quite temperamental. So yeah, I don't overreact. I just listen. And sometimes we'll say a prayer, because we say a prayer at night. We'll say a prayer for his dad and ask for his dad to be happier, so that perhaps he would be nicer.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. So that's a really important lesson there, that you're confident in your parenting, confident enough to know that obviously you're giving your child all the right things, and that he will take to that.
Yeah.
So, and then the praying thing, do you feel like you can pray for him now because you've forgiven him, or does forgiveness mean something completely different to you? I know that's a bit of a difficult one. People are quick, oh, well, he doesn't deserve forgiveness. Oh, but like, I sometimes feel like people get they give that response because they feel like forgiveness means that you have to be around that person again.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I wouldn't say that I'd forgiven him.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that I have. No.
Okay.
I don't tell my son to forgive him for that. But I do explain to him that his dad is a very unhappy person, which is the truth. He is a deeply unhappy person. And, we pray for him to be happier, because then he might be able to be nicer to people and find more joy in life.
So you've really got this separated out, haven't you? Because
yes,
for me, like, I would imagine that you praying for him and stuff like that, you've been able to take those steps because you've forgiven him. And it's not because you've forgiven him, it's because I guess you're looking at the world through your child's eyes.
Yeah. For him, he doesn't need me to sit there and say, well, your dad's this and it. He doesn't need all that. He doesn't need to hear all that. He experienced enough to know what his dad's like.
Okay.
He does know that, but that doesn't stop him from loving him. And I have to understand that. I have to accept that he still loves him. I may hate his guts, but he still loves him.
Yeah.
You know? And so we talk about the fact that it's difficult. And I will say to him about situations I have with my parents, or I say to him, you know, it's really hard when people we love do things that we don't like. You know.
But is it your counselling skills that have given you the strength and the knowledge to do this? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for sure. I had to be more objective. So when we talk about things like this, my counselling hat comes on. I take off my mummy hat, put my counselling hat on, because then I'm objective and I don't overreact to things that he'll tell me, you know. And I can be very calm. Yes, definitely.
Okay. So how did you go about leaving?
Oh, badly, probably. I basically went on, I booked to come to Scotland, me and my son, to visit my family, and we came and I didn't go back.
Okay. So what, did he allow you to go away? Was that, or was there an argument?
Yeah, we had already decided we were splitting. We hadn't. I had decided that we were splitting up. And at the time, he had a bipolar episode. And his family all turned up at the house and told me that this is all my fault and I'm evil and blah, blah. And they needed to be there to look after him. And I needed to get out. And anyway, this is his house and he's paid for it.
Wow.
So I packed up our stuff, went to my other parents for a couple of nights and 3 or 4 nights. And then I drove to Scotland with our stuff in the car and we didn't go back. And he launched a custody case. So that went on for a year.
Wow. And did you feel like you got the support from the court system when you went through that?
That's debatable, really. I think my lawyers were, because I didn't have proof of violence, basically, they weren't really prepared to get into the abuse. I did detail it, I did talk about it at length, but they weren't prepared to really kind of stand on that, I don't think. And he told all kinds of lies, of course, so his was a completely different story to mine. Ultimately, the case was about the child and what they thought was best for him, and they thought it was best for him to stay with me. So, so they did come down on my side. They did actually see his emotional instability, which was what was such a concern. And he showed that over and over again, really. But I really didn't feel as if anybody was on my side. No, I can't tell you that I did.
Do you feel like, were you like calm through the process and that's how come his emotional instability was seen, or were you emotional yourself? Like, because obviously it's a difficult situation, like.
I was fortunate in that my lawyers were quite good at making everything, even if I had been irrational, they would never have sent sort of information or letters or anything that would reflect that. You know,
because obviously you're irrational for a reason, whereas he being like that because that's who he is.
Whereas his letters were clearly dictated by him. And I think he just fought with his solicitors all the time, really. So they just basically said whatever he wanted to. And a lot of that was just complete madness. So you know, it came across as madness, you know, whereas mine were like, okay, no, we're not going to say that. No, we're not going to say it like that, Kirstie. Like, this is what we'll say. You know, they would always kind of calm that down, which I, you know, at the time, but it was for the best. Yeah. I think I wasn't that calm through it. I meditated 2 hours a day.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, there were days I would take my son to school, I would come home, cry, meditate, pick my son up, get through the evening, like, you know, holding my shit together. Yeah, it was hellish. You know, I wasn't calm, but I just used what I had to get through. That's really it.
And so in terms of, like, because you were saying that his family rushed over and said everything was your fault. So do you feel like there was narcissism from their side as well? And that's how come they were quick to defend him rather than try to be objective?
Very definitely. He was a product of his environment. Yeah, very definitely. His mother was just a narcissist extraordinaire. Yeah, the whole family were like that. The whole family behaved that way.
That must have made things even more difficult, because it's one thing when one person is a narcissist themselves and they already have, you know, what's that phase, the flying monkeys, where they have everybody around them believing everything that they say, and you know, so then they're like acting from that, from the narcissist perspective. But if you're dealing with a whole narcissistic family, like, really, you did well to last so long in the relationship.
Yeah, I know. Go me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were awful, really. They're awful. But at the beginning, I got on really well with them. And, you know, there were lots of times where they were kind and, you know.
Yeah.
And they loved my son, you know. I mean, he's got lots of cousins there, so that he loves and gets on great with. So, you know, it's not all bad, but the problem is that it's such a toxic setup, that family system, that they all stab each other in the back all the time. They're, you know, you get sort of rival factions, and, you know, and then the next minute they're back on side with that person and they're against someone else. And I mean, yeah, that's how they are all the time. So I tended just not to get involved in that.
Yeah.
Really. But also their mother was abusive. She was abusive to them in childhood. And once she wasn't able to be physically abusive to them, then she carried on the emotional, verbal abuse. And I just saw that a lot. So
was he not aware of that?
Yes, he was aware of that. He was aware of it. Perhaps not in the way that I am, but he was fully aware that she was abusive.
So has he not had any support from the mental health system?
Well, what support you get from the mental health system is not great, really. He was diagnosed as bipolar, but the health services are not brilliant, you know. And I don't think he's a narc, so he's never going to take up counselling. He's never going to have therapy, because they never want to look at themselves. He would never undertake any kind of therapy, because he would have to look at someone who doesn't really like. So he's not going to do that.
His narcissism kind of overpowered his bipolar.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the worst thing about these situations is that the good moments give you some hope, don't they? Like,
yeah, that's awful. They keep building you up and then they just drop you from a great height.
Yeah.
And
looking back now, I wonder if it's almost if they can see, like, well, let me get her back to here and I know everything's fine, and then I can go back to being my old self. I wonder if they do that, like they build you up, let me get her to here, and then it's kind of going all right, And I wonder if they just fail. Like those are the questions that like come to mind. But obviously, when you're in that situation, you can't keep giving those chances, especially when you've been in it for far too long, as it is.
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. I think, I mean, for instance, when we had first moved into the new house, that was a really, really good time, actually. And we went out and bought furniture. We had like I think it was a bank holiday, but I don't know, it was a day where my son was at nursery, but we weren't working, and we'd gone out and chosen a new sofa, and we had lunch, and we were buying new furniture for the house, and we were quite excited about it. And that was actually quite a nice time.
Yeah.
You know, but I remember not long after that, probably even a few days, he'd said, "Oh, I just got this feeling that everything's going to go wrong." That was my warning sign. That was him telling me, I'm a this up. Well, I see how happy you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, isn't it? And then something would have happened, and it would be like, "See, I told you," and then it would have been an excuse to be negative, and then it would have just spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think perhaps that's a real fear. A fear that I'm going to be rejected, or this is all good. Yeah, this is all going to go wrong because I'm never this happy. I'm not comfortable with this happy, actually, because he's never really known that, that's not something he's ever had. So I'm not comfortable with this happy. I need to get back to conflict and misery because that's where I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
A lot of people self-sabotage, but they're not narcs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and these are the things here that make it difficult, like you said earlier, to define them and to pick them out, because obviously you can't judge everybody by the same kind of standards. So you've been lucky enough to, well, I don't know if you consider it lucky, but I don't know how you see it, but like you've been able to move away from not just the environment, but from the area and, the whole setting that you were in when you were living in this distressed life. What tips would you give to somebody who doesn't have that option?
Okay. This is based on not just me, but some research I did on kind of what happens to women after they leave domestic abuse situations. And the ones that actually recover the best and manage to move on and not go into a relationship that's the same as well are the ones that surround themselves with support. So that can be friends, family, anything you can find. I had friends, family, and Women's Aid. I big up Women's Aid to anyone and everyone who will listen, because I feel like I don't know where I would be without them. They're fantastic. And also spirituality, which was actually not something I expected to get from the research study I did, but that's a fact. People who have some spirituality really recover a lot better. It's a huge source of strength. I don't know. It depends on you, what you want to believe in, but I think you have to believe there's a source. I think that's a huge source of strength. Actually, my spirituality has maintained me through so much. I wouldn't be here now today without that. I don't know what would have happened to me. I don't know how I would have coped. And now I look back and think, oh my God, how did I ever cope before? How did I ever cope without this? So you need those two. Everything else will fall into place. But ultimately, you have got to get your inner strength, yourself, back stable, calm, back into gear. You have to do that. You have to focus on getting yourself balanced. You can keep moving when you're balanced. When you can find balance, you can find somewhere to live. You can find someone to lend you the money for a lawyer. You can, things will come. But unless you can get that, I think you just keep making choices from a bad place. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
You know.
So, like you were saying, one of the things about getting back to yourself, but what about if you have experienced so much trauma that you don't know who you are?
Yeah, there is that, and I did go through that. Yeah, I did think. In fact, I remember saying that to my mum. Actually, without all his drama and conflict, I don't know who I am anymore.
Yeah.
No, I don't know who I am without that. And also, I'd had a child during all of that in that relationship, and that changes you massively as well. And I think, that just left me lost. I wasn't the same person before that I had a child, and I wasn't the same person from this. But it takes time, but you do. What I like to say is I'm now like Kirstie 10, like a new and all lights blinging version of who I used to be. You know, I'm still me, but I'm a different version. I just had to put the pieces back together in a different way.
Right.
You know, and that has taken time.
Yeah.
I think you have to look at your identity as well. I mean, becoming a counsellor has given me a new identity.
Yeah.
You know, and that is again another different version of myself. But yeah, that it takes a couple of years. At Women's Aid, actually, I remember I'd been with them for about a year, and I was a lot better. And she said, it takes about 18 months. You've probably got 6 months to go. And I was like, really? But but you know what? She was bang on, like spot on. 6 months later, I was feeling great.
Yeah.
6 months later, I was really, really good. And that's not to say that I've stayed that way since, of course. Life happens. But it definitely, 18 months was definitely where I hit a time where I actually felt really good about myself again. You know, so it takes a bit of time, but you do get there as long as you have the support and, as I said, spiritual strength. Really, I think. It's massive.
And lastly, do you have any tips that you can share about being an objective parent when you've experienced these situations?
I would say get a lawyer. Get a lawyer so you can speak through the lawyer if necessary. There are times when we are able to have, make arrangements without the lawyer, but then there are other times when we can't. That's really dependent on whether he's being crazy or not. Who knows? It could be traffic, anything. Who knows? Get a lawyer. That's the most important thing, because if you need to come to agreements or anything like that, everything is recorded. Record everything that's said. Don't speak to them on the phone. Do it through email, text message, somewhere, some way that it's always written down. Okay. Also, don't get dragged into conflict. I have lots of instances where he would create conflict over something small, or like, my son had to have his tonsils out, so he created a big conflict around that he needed to be there and he didn't know anything about this and blah blah blah. Well, it's remember that it's not about him, for one.
Mm.
It's not about them.
Yeah.
And all you need to do is share information. You don't need to get upset about it. You don't need to get dragged into the conflict about it. I just gave him the information that the hospital had given me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be there, you can be there. No one's stopping you.
Yeah.
Of course, he had no interest in being there.
Yeah.
It was just a way of creating conflict.
Yeah.
So don't get drawn into that. Don't get drawn into, I'm being left out of things. Don't get drawn into that. You don't have to answer. When they send you an email moaning about this, that, or the other, just don't answer, or ask them to address that to your solicitor.
Mm.
Okay. You don't have to answer every time they have a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. The only things you have to answer are where you need to make arrangements. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to share parenting with them. Don't feel obliged. You're not obligated.
Yeah.
And remember that most of the time, they're not very good at parenting. They actually want you to do it for them, and they want you to tell them what they should do. Okay. So don't do that either. They need to figure it out for themselves. Okay. And meditate, anything that keeps you calm.
Mm-hmm.
Don't react.
Yeah.
And don't overreact when your child tells you things. Just listen and talk to them. You can explain certain things, but you have to be careful how you do that, because like I said, just remember that your child loves them still, and that may make things difficult, but you're doing the best, because they have the right to find out who that parent is for themselves.
Yeah.
They have to find that out for themselves. You telling them is not helpful. And actually, it's probably more damaging in the long run. So they have to find out who they are for themselves, and they will. And you'll be there to pick up the pieces when they do. And you remember that you're the stable one. You're the stable parent. You're the one that's there. You're the one that they need and rely on.
Lovely. Very important. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nye. That was good.
If you would like your voice to be heard on the Your Voice in Power Hour, then why not get in touch with me at myvoiceinpower@outlook.com. If you would like your voice to be heard on the Your Voice in Power Hour, then why not get in touch with me at myvoiceinpower@outlook.com.